I thought I would interview my primary support person, my husband Aid. So Aid, we're just going to talk about some of the things that have happened since I was diagnosed. And you came with me to that first appointment with the neurologist, and I'm just wondering, what were your first thoughts when I got the diagnosis?
Oh, crikey. It was a while ago now, wasn't it?
4 years.
I think you'd pretty much convinced yourself that it was a foregone conclusion that you had Parkinson's. So in some ways it was just a confirmation of what you felt, being that both your mum and dad had Parkinson's. So in some ways it wasn't a complete surprise, but at the same time I guess it was still a bit of a shock in the realization that your fears had sort of come true, really. Yeah.
And we'd had conversations prior to that where I'd said that I had a feeling if me or my siblings got Parkinson's, it was bound to be me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, we have a thing called Aid and Sue's law, which is similar to Murphy's law, and you can almost predict some of these things happening sometimes, and I guess that's one of the biggest pitfalls of that particular rule in this case.
It's one of those times when you don't want to be right, isn't it?
No, that's right.
And the thing that sticks in my mind is when the specialist said to me, I have to say that you do have Parkinson's. And I looked at him and I said, is there any doubt? And he said, no doubt whatsoever. So that sort of put the lid on it. We knew what we were dealing with.
Yeah. Well, I was quite surprised that he was able to tell, just from a few exercises that he gave you, and he wasn't in any doubt at all.
I know, and being part of a Facebook group for people with Parkinson's and their carers, people have gone through all sorts of tests, scans, and I don't know whether there's blood tests for Parkinson's, I'm not sure, but people have gone through a raft of tests, and I just was there for maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was able to pick it without anything much to assess me by, other than his experience. So you weren't completely surprised when the diagnosis was confirmed?
No, not entirely. No, from what you said, and as I said, I think you had a particular reasonable idea that it was going to be diagnosed.
And another thing I remember, when we were waiting to be seen and a door opened in a corridor sort of close by, and somebody obviously with Parkinson's in a rather advanced state was coming out, and they had that sort of shuffling gait that's typical of Parkinson's, and I thought to myself, oh God, I hope that's not going to be me, just before we went in. So yeah, that was a bit tough.
Yeah, and I think whenever I see people with more advanced Parkinson's, I tend to think, is that going to be the future? But you just don't know, because everybody's journey is different, so you just don't know. It'll affect different people in different ways. So I think it's, in some ways, you just live for the present and not, don't look too far into the future and think the worst, basically, because it may never happen. You just don't know what the future holds.
No, and I often talk about not focusing on the end game, for living for the moment, like you say. And how do you feel my attitude to life has changed since that diagnosis?
Well, I think it's changed quite a lot in the fact that you've also, retired. I think partly because of, your colleagues recognising some of the symptoms and being honest enough to tell you. But I think you've got a very positive attitude. I think you're coping extremely well, and it's good that in your instance that Parkies, touch wood, does seem to be a bit of a slow burner. In fact, it's almost ironic that most of your health issues you've had since you've been diagnosed have been nothing to do with Parkinson's at all. So, but I think you've got a very positive, very good attitude towards it, and I think your blog has helped a lot. To face up to it, basically, and not to let it rule your life. That you're in charge, basically, and Parkinson's isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've become more family focused. I think because you and I have been such a unit together that we haven't really needed other people too much in our lives. But you and other family members have become more important to me.
Yeah, I think that's right. Particularly grandchildren, and obviously your own kids as well. You know, your son and daughter.
Yeah. So the diagnosis has changed my attitude to life in so many ways. And I think it makes life more precious. And I have have had talks with friends at work when I was working, and one of them in particular said she had a friend just diagnosed with cancer, and they only had months to live. And sort of, while I sympathised with her, I thought to myself, at least I should have time to live my life, and it's not going to be foreshortened necessarily by Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So we talked about when I was first diagnosed, we talked about when was a good time to tell people, friends, family, people at work. And you're a lot more introverted than me, and I tend to tell people everything. I'm an oversharer. And your thoughts, I think, were that you didn't feel there was any hurry to tell people.
I can't really remember, to be honest. But I think the right thing to do is to be quite open about the diagnosis. I don't think you should hide it by any means. I think you should be quite open. I mean, I think close friends and family might be, I don't know, what their initial reaction might be shock. They might look at you in a different light. Maybe some of the fear that people have of sort of outing themselves is that they don't want to be seen as somebody else, you know, as somebody with Parkinson's. They just want people to see them as they always were. I don't know, but I think the best thing to do is to be open and honest with people and tell close friends and family, you know, about your diagnosis. I think that's the best thing to do.
And I think, you know, like that picture of that gentleman that came out that door with the shuffling gait, I think that's the immediate. So I think that's often the immediate picture that people have of a person with Parkinson's. And I want to kind of show people that we are so much more than that, and that is not necessarily what's going to happen to all of us. I want to be an example of someone living positively with Parkinson's.
Yeah, and I think you are. You are living positively with Parkinson's. As I said, unfortunately, the negative things in your life have been due to other issues.
Actually, that brings to mind a word I used in my blog yesterday or a couple of days ago, and the word was comorbidities, and you hadn't heard that before. And because I had been a social worker in a hospital setting for 11 years, the word comorbidities popped up so frequently that, you know, you figure everybody knows it basically by the end of it all. And it sounds sort of like it's something to do with death, with that morbidities part of the word. But what it means is people like myself. I have Parkinson's. That's supposedly my primary health issue, but I also have arthritis, and I have hiatus hernia, and I have a couple of other things as well. And it just means that you consider that person a more complex picture because they don't just have Parkinson's. So that's why in the hospital people look at comorbidities for somebody that's got a long-term condition to see how it impacts on their life in general. So when I was first diagnosed, we lived in a different home. We lived in a rather large 5-bedroom house with upstairs a lovely big bedroom for us and a big bedroom for our granddaughters. And probably not too long in my diagnosis, I came to you and asked if we could talk about the possibility of selling the house. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts were when I raised that topic.
I think I was reluctant in the beginning to think about moving house so soon. I definitely didn't see the urgency as such. Maybe urgency is the wrong word, but I mean, I just didn't feel the need to move or to start looking to move that soon. Really, I would have been happy to have left it a year or two down the road.
What do you think my reasoning was behind that?
Well, it's obviously because we had a two-story house with stairs, and obviously you thought, well, sometime down the line, I mean, at that stage you don't know how far down the line it's going to occur that obviously your mobility is going to be affected and you wouldn't be able to get up and down stairs, and you'd want something, a house which is a bit more user friendly.
So, I mean, there are a number of reasons I wanted to move earlier. For me, the big thing in my life that I don't like is not having control. I'm a planner, I'm an organiser, I like to be in control of my life as much as possible. And what I didn't want to happen was to put off selling the house, and then an event occurred at some stage and we would have to shift in a hurry. So I wanted to be able to look at other houses, to view them with a view to staying in there as long as possible. And who knows as we get older whether either of us is going to have mobility issues. So I wanted to be part of the process. And when we shifted, I was able to lift boxes, pack boxes, get up on step stools, do things in the garden, things like that. And in my head I was saying, if this had happened when I was more incapacitated, I would have been a spectator and it wouldn't have been a good feeling for me.
No, and I think obviously you were proved right, because although that's another story, our house move did open a whole can of worms which we could well have done without, but no, ultimately we've landed up in the right place, in the right house, and we're both really happy here, so no, it's worked out good.
Maybe it's that psychic ability of mine that I joke about. So what were your first thoughts when I first talked to you about writing the blog?
Gosh, it's difficult to remember. I think I thought it was a good idea to get, it was an outlet for you to get your thoughts down and also to share with other people. I think it's important. It was good for you that you were able to express, your feelings in a way, and to share your feelings, and also to be able to help other people, starting their journey at the same time as you, or people who are also wanting to understand their own feelings and how they felt about their diagnosis and what their thoughts were about their future.
Yeah, and you've described me as being quite positive with my Parkinson's, but with my blog I'm very, very honest, and I remember one day, I don't know what was going on, but I started the blog post with, warning, this is not going to be a happy post. And these things happen, and you can't deny them, and if I was happy and chirpy all the time, people would wonder what the hell was wrong with me. I have to be honest about my feelings, and that's important.
Yeah, otherwise there's no point in doing it, is there? There's no point in doing a blog or your podcast if you're not honest and open, because otherwise you're just fooling yourself and fooling everybody who's reading it or listening to it.
Exactly. I have to be honest and relatable. The other thing, the weird thing that I've discovered with my Parkinson's and the effects it has on me is, and I've read this in articles, if you have any artistic kind of outlets, if you paint, if you draw, for me, if you write poetry, it can enhance those abilities. I don't know whether it's the medications or something that Parky turns on in your brain, but I've written more poetry in the last few years than I have had in ages. So the blog, I chuck a few of those poems in there from time to time, and some stuff about our travels and our lives, not necessarily directly relating to Parkinson's, because my life is not just about Parkinson's. It's a life lived to the full as much as I can. So I like to include different parts of my life in my blog as well.
No, that's a good thing, definitely.
So somebody that I know talked to me about my blog and said they felt it had an unhealthy focus on my Parkinson's and didn't think it would be good for me. And I actually said to them, my blog saved my life, and it's always been positive for me.
No, it has been a good thing, definitely. It has been a positive thing. It hasn't been in any way negative.
No, and I get some really good comments from people, and I love getting comments from people that that it helps them and they identify with the things that are happening to me, and that makes it worthwhile. It's not just an avenue for me. It's giving hopefully some people out there a chance to read something or hear something now that I have my podcast that maybe have helped to them. So just mentioned my podcast. So when I came to you and said, hey, I think I might do a podcast, what were your initial thoughts and feelings about that?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a natural progression from your blog to do some podcasts. I think it's a good idea.
And I know when I first started doing the podcast, I would basically write a script for myself almost, and it was very, very scripted and wooden, and I look back and listen to those and it sounds so different. And now I might write some bullet points, but I just do it off the cuff, and what happens. So I think it's a lot more natural, and I'm so keen to hear from other people with Parkinson's, other people who are caring for people with Parkinson's, that we can have a conversation and talk about how they're feeling and how they're supported, and give other people with Parkinson's a voice.
Yeah, it's a good idea to get other people's perspectives on the Parkinson's as well. Learn about other people's journeys, because everybody's different. There's no one common time frame, if you like, where people's journeys will be the same. Everybody is different, so it'd be good to get different perspectives from different people and to learn about their own journeys.
Yeah, I think that'll be excellent if we can make it happen. It will be great. So, just thinking about my progression, it's 4 years since my diagnosis and will be 5 years this Christmas since I was diagnosed. So, have you noticed any progression?
Your processing has slowed,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you get some slight tremors occasionally in your hands.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has been sort of masked by your other health issues and the fact that you've had to go through some reasonably major operations, which have involved, anaesthetic and painkillers and morphine, and all these things have almost masked what's going on with your Parkinson's. So it'll be interesting to see, once you get off all this medication, all these painkillers. I mean, I know your morphine's out of the picture now, or just from today. And I've noticed a difference in you, in your voice, in the way you string sentences together and your speech. It's all improved. So I think once things settle down, be good then to be able to take a good stock at how far your Parkinson's has progressed, if at all, because I think, as you said, and I think other people have said as well, you're a reasonable slow burner. I mean, last time we saw the neurologist, which I think was probably near 4 years since your diagnosis, he even said that you were a bit of a slow burner. So hopefully you'll continue along the same vein, and you won't develop too many symptoms too soon.
Yeah, here's hoping. Yeah, you mentioned the morphine. I tell you, while the morphine was needed for the pain, it certainly played tricks on my body and my brain and my speech. I was concerned that my speech was going to be permanently affected. I had real stuttering speech, having trouble getting my words together. It was horrible, and I've been quite articulate in my life, and I just couldn't get a sensible sentence out, and it was actually really the thing that bothered me the most about what was happening for me with those other health issues.
I think you can tell, even now though, I think there's still some remnants of the medication in your system, because you're not, your speech isn't as fluent maybe as it was, prior to these operations, or to this medication. So I think you've probably still got, I know you're still on some hefty painkillers, so I think there is still something, affecting your speech.
Absolutely, and I acknowledge that, but it's still hugely improved to what it was, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, definitely.
It's getting back to what it should be.
Mm.
So, what did you feel when I told you I wanted to retire last year?
Well, I think my initial reaction was it was too soon. But then I quickly came round, thinking that it was definitely a good idea. That you definitely did the right thing. There's no question about that. Particularly, you had one particularly, good friend at work who you'd said, look, if you recognise that my symptoms have progressed and I'm not performing in my job as I should, to let you know, which I think it obviously was a big deal for them to turn around and tell you that. But you were in a very stressful job with an awful lot of responsibility, and I think if you were struggling to perform, I think other people would recognise that and maybe not come forward and tell you, or they would just talk behind your back, or you don't want that sort of thing going on, and you wouldn't want to underperform, and as I said, a responsible job, directly affecting and impacting on other people's lives. So if you didn't think you were able to maintain that level, then you absolutely did the right thing in retiring, no question about that.
And you mentioned my friend who had that conversation with me, and we met up in the cafe for a coffee, and as she walked towards me, she looked really, really stressed and about nearly to burst into tears, and I think that conversation in some ways was harder for her than it was for me.
Yeah.
And she said, I would never have done this if you hadn't made me promise, but she did me a favour.
Oh, she did, absolutely. And also, to remove that level of stress from your life was a huge deal as well. It made so much difference. I could almost see the relief in you, the fact that you didn't have to, get up, go to work, and I think, deal with all that stress and the responsibility, and maybe always in the back of your mind that because of your Parkinson's you wouldn't, you would be seen by others as to be underperforming. And yes, no, you absolutely did the right thing, no question about that.
And it's interesting, when I was amongst it, because I'd been doing it for 20 years, I don't think I fully realised the level of stress I was under. And I've said to you quite recently, I'm so glad I don't have that job anymore. It was really stressful, and I didn't realise how stressful till I wasn't in it.
And stress is not a good thing for Parkinson's either.
No.
That's one of the biggest factors in heightening symptoms and maybe even quickening up progression of the condition. So to remove, I remember actually seeing a program about Billy Connolly and the way he completely removed all the stress from his life. And one of his hobbies, if you like, or one of his things that he used to do to remove stress was he just became a fisherman. He did a lot of fishing. So I think that that sort of thing, to be able to do something like that, which gives you time for reflection and takes your mind off things. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. You don't need stress. Nobody needs stress in their lives, whether they've got Parkinson's or not. Stress is never a good thing.
No.
So one of the big things to try and get rid of.
Well, I think we've got rid of the worst of the stress with me retiring from my job. So yeah, it has been the best thing I could have done, and I'm so glad I did it when I did. So as my husband, how do you feel if somebody was to refer to you as a carer?
Well, I don't look at myself in that light, really. I mean, I know, again, not because of your Parkinson's, and ironically because of other health conditions you've had, I've had to do 99% of the work around the house. Not just cooking and doing all the other chores, but being a taxi driver and ferrying you around all these different appointments.
And that bloody walker that you have to fold up and put in the boot every time.
Every time we get in and out of the car.
No, you can't go to the dump when I don't need it anymore and chuck it away. We need to give it back.
I can't quite remember what the original question was.
People referring to you as a carer.
Oh, that's right. I don't see myself as a carer. I think when you sign up to marriage, it's for better for worse, in sickness and in health. The old cliches. And I know there's been instances where partners have just done a runner as soon as they find out, there's, Parkinson's is going to be an issue. But I don't see myself as a role in a carer. I think maybe down the line, perhaps, when you have to start, help with showering and dressing and getting more into those more sort of fundamental type daily chores. That's maybe when I'd see myself as a carer, but certainly not at the moment.
But an important point to raise, my dear, when you mention showering and dressing, I think it's important to realise that there is help out there, that you don't have to do all those things, that you can be my husband and we can get help in to do that regardless of your income here in New Zealand. You can get showering and dressing provided for free. And I think sometimes people are reluctant to have other people in their home to do those things, but to retain some ability to continue to function as a husband, more than a carer, I think it's important to consider that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
So we go to a peer support group every month. How do you feel it helps or doesn't help for us?
I think it's a great help, really, just to be able to talk to other people with Parkinson's and their partner and get their take on their experiences and issues that they've come across in their own lives. And it's the good thing about talk at the support group is it's not all about Parkinson's.
Oh, there's been a lot of talk about rugby.
Well, there's not, it's not purely focused on Parkinson. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of talk about that, and particularly for people coming along to the support group for the first time. You always want to know their feelings and thoughts on their diagnosis and how they're coping and how their partner's coping, etc. But no, I think it's a very positive thing, definitely. Yeah, and I'd recommend it to anybody. Don't hide this condition. Get out there and make sure you tell close friends and family and look for a support group. Don't bottle it up inside, because I think you could easily get very angry and bitter and twisted that you've been dealt this blow and you're struggling to deal with it. I think you need to do everything that you can, for support, and be open and talk about it and be able to, have a good conversation with other people about it and share their experiences.
And I think it's good that we've been going for quite some time, and so we're all in the reasonably early stages. Some are still working, and we're building a relationship where we trust each other and we can talk to each other, so that down the track, hopefully, we will have people to tap on the shoulder and say, hey, can we have a talk? How do you deal with this?
Yeah. It's not just people you see every so often in the support group. I think over a period of time, you're building friendships as well, which is going to be invaluable.
Absolutely. So now to you as my husband, we're obviously spending a lot more time together these days with me being retired. So I always talk about self-care. I used to do when I was doing my stressful job. I had various ways of caring for myself to try and keep myself as healthy as possible. What do you do for yourself to get away from this and to care for yourself?
I think walking helps me a lot. I've always been keen on walking, and I'm quite happy to be a solitary walker. I've done several long distance footpaths in England and in Scotland on my own for several weeks.
You're a wee hermit.
and I've also walked with some good friends. So I think walking, not just for the physical exercise, I think mentally it's really good as well. And I think I've heard it said that walking is good for stress. I think, and also playing the guitar as well, concentrating on that, and that takes your mind off of other things, and it's a good way of relieving stress. It's being able to concentrate on music.
So it sounds like you've got some good strategies, and you mentioned walking, and we used to go for walks together, didn't we? But haven't been able to for some time. So hopefully you will allow me into that bubble where I can at least do some of those walks with you.
No, of course, because we used to do some major tramps. We're looking back when I first came out. I mean, it doesn't seem possible now. We're talking 15, 20 years ago. we comfortably used to walk for 6 hours in the Port Hills, and it wasn't by any means a straight and level walk. It's up and down hill and quite craggy some parts of it.
Oh, you liked a hill.
Yeah.
I remember huffing and puffing and grumbling my way up hills with you at the top looking down. You always seemed to find a walk where we had to go up a hill before it even warmed up.
But as much as I like, solitary walks, it is nice to share experiences as well, So there's pros and cons for both, and it would be nice again to be able to share walks.
We'll get there, my love. So what would you say to the partners of people with Parkinson's? What advice would you give them?
Well, one thing, join a support group.
Yeah.
So again, you can, get other people's perspectives, other partners, what their thoughts are, and don't try and stress too much about it. Just take life day to day. It's all about experiences. I heard something a while ago about the material aspect of life against the experiences aspect of life, and I think as you get older anyway, with or without Parkinson's, I think because time seems to go that much quicker, you've got to make the most of it. It's, we've talked about going away, for several days here and there, and seeing more of our own country. And I know hopefully we'll be able to get to the UK next year and enjoy some of that as well. Enjoy England, and I can go back to some of my roots maybe, but it's nice to share these experiences. But I think, I know initially, when your partner gets diagnosed, to some people it may be a complete shock. Other people maybe they had an inkling that it was there, and they just needed that confirmation. But I think a peer support group is quite important, because it's very difficult to cope with this journey on your own. I think you do need to be able to share and talk to other people, get their perspective on it. So I think that's one of the biggest things.
Absolutely. So what impact do you think my condition has on our relationship?
Well, I think again, Parkinson's in itself has probably had a minimal impact in some ways, but it's been your other health issues that have been the biggest problem. That's had by far the biggest impact. Your 2 operations you've had, sort of as soon as you got over one, along comes something else. So in terms of your Parkinson's, I mean, it's obviously good that you retired. It gives us a bit more time together and to be able to do more together, particularly now as I'm only working part-time. That's what we had planned. We had planned to spend more time travelling the country,
So my blog and now my podcast keep me pretty busy. How do you feel that impacts on me? Do you think there's a positive or a negative thing that I spend all that time doing these things?
I think you've got to strike the right balance. I think at the moment it's a positive thing. I know initially it was a bit frustrating for you because you had to get your head around the new technology in order to do it. But I think now you've got over that hurdle. No, I think it's a good thing. But as I say, you got to strike the right balance, really. You don't want to obsess over something. You don't want to be doing it all day, every day. Maybe an hour or 2 hours a day, or some days not at all. I think it is important to manage your sort of day, if you like, and not spend too much time on it. But then again, it obviously is of benefit. So it's definitely a good thing to do, no question about that.
And I think sometimes I'm sitting here in my study doing a blog or a podcast or something like that, and you're in your study playing your guitar or doing what you're doing, and 2 or 3 hours can pass and we've both been doing our own thing, and then we might catch up later. But I think it's healthy that we each have our own interests, that we encourage each other to keep up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is important. It's important to have your own interests, because you can't be joined at the hip all the time or be in each other's pocket. I think it's nice we both have our own interests, and we're both happy, for each other to have these interests, and we manage our time, together, So I think we've got the right balance.
I think so too. So I'm going to wrap this up shortly. So is there anything else you'd like to say before I close up?
No, I don't think so. I think you're coping pretty well. As I said, main issues haven't been your Parkinson's related, which is a shame because a lot of the things which they recommend you to do to manage your Parkinson's you've not been able to do,
No.
particularly in terms of exercise. Again, walking could be of huge benefit to you, so it's important that you get over these medical issues and get back on track again and be able to manage your Parkinson's a bit better.
And somebody said to me, I think it was a physiotherapist, that exercise is medicine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I think walking is a great stress reliever, and good exercise. So it has dual benefits really.
Well, thank you, my dear. So I think we'll close up with, this is one of my longest podcasts ever. So thank you to Aid, my husband, my very caring husband, but not my carer. This has been Sue for Parkies and Me, my journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be strong, be brave, be you.